"Rocky, quiet," I whispered to my border collie, whose low growl vibrated through the darkness. The sound of glass shattering jolted me awake. I rolled out of bed in one fluid motion, my hand instinctively reaching for the tactical flashlight I keep on my nightstand. Old habits don't die, even years after leaving the service. Through the window, I could make out shadowy figures moving around my greenhouse. 3, maybe 4 people. They weren't being particularly stealthy, almost as if they didn't care about being caught. That's what bothered me most. But let me back up. My name is Michael Anders, former Navy SEAL, medically discharged after my last deployment left me with a bum knee and the kind of memories that make for restless nights. That's why I moved to Willow Creek 3 years ago, a quiet lakeside community where I bought 5 acres with plans to build something resembling peace. The doctors called it PTSD. I called it Tuesday. Either way, I found that working with my hands, growing things, actual, living things that thrived under my care, did more for me than any prescription ever could. So I built a greenhouse and planted an orchard, a place where I could watch life cycle through its seasons while I tried to make sense of my own. So this is the story. That was before I met Karen Westfield and her band of HOA crusaders. Mr. Anders, this is the 4th notice regarding your agricultural experiment. Karen stood at my front door, clipboard in hand, her blonde bob unmoved by the breeze. Behind her, 2 men in matching polo shirts emblazoned with GRI logos knotted along like bobblehead dogs. "It's just a greenhouse and fruit trees, Mrs. Westfield." I kept my voice level, the way I'd been trained when dealing with hostile situations. "All on my property, all within county regulations." Perhaps county regulations, but not Willow Creek Homeowners Association guidelines. She thrust the clipboard toward me. Section 7, paragraph 3 clearly states that all structural additions must maintain aesthetic coherence with neighborhood standards. I didn't take the clipboard. I reviewed the HOA guidelines before purchasing. There's nothing prohibiting private gardens. Karen's smile tightened. That was before our Green Revival initiative. The association voted on these amendments last month. I wasn't notified of any vote. The notice was posted on the community board and emailed to residents. She looked past me with barely disguised disdain. "Perhaps you should check your spam folder more often, Mr. Anders." That was 2 months ago. My first real run-in with the Willow Creek HOA and this mysterious Green Revival initiative. In hindsight, I should have recognized the tactical maneuver for what it was, reconnaissance before the real assault began. Now, I crept through my house toward the back door, Rocky at my heels. Outside, voices were growing louder. "Just cut the lock and we're in. Documentation says he's growing non-native species. That's all we need for environment. What if he wakes up? Former military, right? That's why we brought Eric. He knows how to handle these types." I dialed Marshal Caldwell's number. He wasn't just the county sheriff. He was the only person in local law enforcement who seemed to recognize that something wasn't right with the increasing HOA enforcement actions in neighboring communities. "Caldwell," his gruff voice answered. "It's Anders. Got intruders at my property, 4 of them, trying to break into my greenhouse. They're claiming environmental authority. On my way, 10 minutes. Don't engage unless necessary." I slipped out the side door to get a better look. The moon was nearly full, casting enough light to make out GRI enforcement emblazoned on their jackets. Since when did a local environmental initiative have its own enforcement squad? One of them, a burly man with a shaved head, was working bolt cutters on the padlock. Another was setting up industrial sprayers, the kind used for mass pesticide application. My stomach dropped. They weren't here to issue a citation. They were here to destroy everything I'd built. I stepped out from the shadows. "This is private property. You need to leave. Now." All 4 figures spun toward me. The big one, Eric, I presumed, stepped forward. hand moving toward his waistband. "Mr. Anders, we have authorization to inspect and remediate environmental hazards." He flashed a badge that looked official enough in the dim light. "Green Revival Initiative, Environmental Enforcement Division. Step aside, sir." "I don't recognize your authority and you're trespassing." I stood my ground. "Sheriff's on his way." Eric laughed. "By the time he gets here, we'll be done. The HOA has granted us full access rights." That's when I noticed the spray-painted symbol on my greenhouse wall. A green circle with a diagonal line through it. The same marking I'd spotted on 3 other properties in Willow Creek over the past month. All 3 of those families had moved out within weeks. I was being targeted. But why? Rocky growled as one of the men stepped forward. I gave the command I hoped I wouldn't need to use. "Protect." And just like that, the night erupted into chaos. "So let me get this straight," Marshal Caldwell said, flipping through his notepad. 4 individuals claiming to be from this Green Revival Initiative tried to break into your greenhouse at 2 a.m., armed with pesticide sprayers and bolt cutters. We sat at my kitchen table as dawn broke. Outside, forensic techs were collecting evidence. Rocky lay at my feet, occasionally lifting his head when officers came too close. "That's right," I confirmed. "They had badges, uniforms, the works." Caldwell rubbed his stubbled chin. "And you're certain the HOA is behind this?" "Karen Westfield's been on my case since I built the greenhouse. First aesthetic violations, then water usage complaints. Now suddenly I'm harboring invasive species." "Any idea what they were planning to spray?" I shook my head. "Nothing good." Caldwell leaned back. "You're not the first. We've had similar reports in other communities. HOAs suddenly getting aggressive about environmental enforcement, bringing in consultants to handle residents who..." "What happens to non-compliant residents?" "They leave, houses get sold well below market value, always to the same development group." Caldwell tapped his pen. "Every time I start pulling on threads, I hit roadblocks." "Since when do HOAs have enforcement squads?" I asked. "Exactly, something bigger is happening here." I pulled out a folded paper I'd found when someone in a GRI polo was photographing my land. "Maybe this will help." Caldwell unfolded it, eyes narrowing. It was a partial document headed Project Green Shield, Phase 2 Implementation, with a list of properties, including mine, marked for ecological remediation. "Where did you get this?" "Found it after one of their inspections." Caldwell studied it. "This is bigger than your greenhouse. You've been tagged as a Phase 2 target." "What does that mean?" "I don't know. But I'll find out." He stood. "Meanwhile, set up security. These people won't stop." After Caldwell left, I sat alone, the morning sun streaming through windows that suddenly felt exposed. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, counterterrorism operations in countries we were never officially in, and now I was being threatened by an HOA environmental committee? It didn't add up, unless I'd seen this pattern before in villages overseas. Local authority figures suddenly enforcing new rules, targeting specific landowners, creating pressure until they had no choice but to leave. A soft invasion tactic, one I'd been trained to recognize. Was I seeing the same thing here in suburban America? That afternoon, I turned my property into a surveillance fortress. Cameras in trees, motion sensors along the perimeter, and a few other surprises from my days in spec ops. As I set the last camera, my neighbor Frank Miller wandered over. Frank was in his 70s, a retired schoolteacher who'd lived in Willow Creek longer than most. "Building Fort Knox, Michael?" he chuckled, though his eyes held concern. "Just some basic security, been having trouble with trespassers." Frank lowered his voice. "It's that HOA bunch, isn't it? Karen and her green police?" I nodded. "They've been after others, too. The Thompsons on Lakeview Drive, and the Jacksons before them." Frank sighed. "This used to be a good neighborhood before that revival initiative showed up." Worse? I asked, suddenly alert. Well, Frank looked over his shoulder, the Jacksons didn't just move because of fines. Tom told me they received threats, anonymous calls, strange cars outside their house. Their dog got sick, poisoned, Tom thought. My hand instinctively reached to pat Rocky's head. When did this start? About 6 months ago, right after that tech company bought the old Ferguson property by the lake. Next thing you know, we've got this environmental committee and everyone's yard needs to be compliant. Have you had trouble, Frank? He shook his head. I keep my head down, too old to fight. He looked at me knowingly. But you're not, are you, son? No, sir, I'm not. As Frank walked away, I realized he was right. This wasn't random harassment. It was coordinated, methodical, qualities I recognized from military operations. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept returning to a mission in Syria where we'd uncovered documents showing how shell companies had systematically displaced farmers through environmental regulations before selling the land to mining interests. It was called soft clearing, bloodless land acquisition through bureaucratic means. Just before dawn, my phone pinged with an alert from one of my cameras. 2 figures were spray painting another green circle on my mailbox. One attached a document sealed in plastic. After they left, I retrieved it. The header read Final Environmental Remediation Notice with the GRI and HOA logos. I had 72 hours to voluntarily remediate my property by removing the greenhouse and orchard, or face community support and enforcement actions. They had declared war. Now I needed to find out who they really were. I need everything you have on the Green Revival Initiative. I slid a flash drive across the desk to Aaron Matthews, a former Army intelligence specialist who now ran a cybersecurity firm. We'd served together in Kandahar and she had contacts in places that would be useful. Aaron looked skeptical. Local environmental group giving you trouble? That doesn't sound like something requiring my skills. It's not what it seems. I leaned forward. They've got uniforms, badges, enforcement squads. They're targeting specific properties, using environmental violations as pretext. Sounds like overzealous tree huggers. That's what I thought at first. I handed her my documents. This is organized, Aaron. Military precision. Soft clearing tactics. That caught her attention. Aaron had seen the same operations I had. Communities dismantled through bureaucratic warfare. Project Green Shield, she read. Never heard of it. I need to know who's behind GRI and why they want my land badly enough to send armed enforcers. Aaron studied me. You could just move, sell the place, start over. The suggestion hit a nerve. That greenhouse saved my life, Aaron, after Mosul. I didn't need to elaborate. Growing things, building instead of destroying. It's the only thing that keeps the noise in my head quiet. She nodded, understanding. Give me a few days. And Anders? Watch your 6. Back in Willow Creek, I decided to confront Karen Westfield publicly. The farmers market seemed perfect. Karen never missed it. Her royal court, where she held audience with HOA subjects. I spotted her by the organic honey stand, surrounded by neighborhood sycophants. Mrs. Westfield, I'd like to talk about the men who tried to break into my property. Conversations quieted as heads turned. Karen's smile remained fixed, though her eyes hardened. Mr. Anders, this is hardly the place for HOA matters. I agree, but armed men trying to destroy private property in the middle of the night? That's something the community should know about. More people were stopping to listen. Karen's smile tightened. I have no idea what you're talking about. The Green Revival Initiative conducts regular inspections, all pre-approved when you signed your HOA agreement. At 2 a.m.? With pesticide sprayers and bolt cutters? I showed her my security photos. These men claimed HOA authorization. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face before composure returned. Mr. Anders, your property has been flagged for numerous environmental violations. The GRI team was following protocol for severe noncompliance. What violations specifically? Asked Diane Chen, whose lakefront property was also on the Project Green Shield document. I've received similar notices with only vague references to community standards. Karen's gaze darted between us. The violations are well documented. If you'd like to contest them, there's an appeals process, which requires a $500 filing fee per violation, I interrupted. Convenient way to silence opposition. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Karen's two associates appeared at her side. This is harassment, she said, voice clipped, and spreading misinformation about a community initiative is grounds for additional fines. It's not misinformation if I have proof. I addressed the crowd. The Green Revival Initiative is marking properties for remediation under Project Green Shield. Anyone seen these symbols? I held up a photo of the green circle. Several people exchanged glances. Bob Warren, who owned an organic farm at the edge of the development, raised his hand. They said it was non-approved fertilizers, he said, but I've been certified organic for 15 years. Next thing I know, I'm getting daily fines. The GRI is a legitimate conservation program, Karen insisted. Mr. Anders is upset because his non-compliant greenhouse violates community standards. Then why target only certain properties? Asked Diane. The lakefront ones, the larger lots? That's enough, Karen snapped. Alan, call security. One of her associates reached for his phone, but I wasn't finished. Before you do that, I said to the crowd, I've started a forum online, willowcreekwatch.org. If you've received strange notices or seen these markers, share your experiences. It's time we compared notes. Karen's face flushed. This is fear-mongering. You'll be hearing from our attorneys. Looking forward to it, they can explain why an HOA committee needs armed enforcers with fake badges. As Karen stormed away, neighbors approached me with their own GRI stories. Some had received notices, others had been pressured to sell. All felt something wasn't right, but had been afraid to speak up. By evening, willowcreekwatch.org had 50 posts sharing similar experiences. The pattern was undeniable. Properties with specific characteristics were being systematically targeted. Lakefront lots, larger parcels, corner properties that, if combined, would create substantial contiguous acreage. Someone was assembling a land puzzle using the HOA as their tool. My phone rang around midnight. It was Erin. You need to see this, she said. GRI isn't local. It's a subsidiary of Nexus Development Group, which is owned by Blackwater Capital. Never heard of them. They operate through shell companies. But here's the interesting part. Blackwater Capital is developing eco-friendly smart communities across the country. They buy up existing developments, consolidate the land, and rebuild with high-density housing marketed as sustainable living spaces. Let me guess, they target waterfront properties? Exactly, and they use the same playbook every time. Partner with the local HOA, introduce environmental regulations, squeeze out non-compliant homeowners. Those who fight back get special attention, like midnight visits from fake environmental cops? Precisely. There's more. I found communications mentioning Project Green Shield specifically. It's their acquisition strategy for Willow Creek. Phase 1 was infiltrating the HOA. Phase 2 is targeted removal of key properties. Phase 3? She hesitated. What's Phase 3? Massive buyout offers to remaining residents once property values tank due to environmental concerns. They're manufacturing a crisis. And Karen Westfield? Hired gun. Former corporate compliance officer who specializes in community transitions. She's done this in 3 other communities. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't about my greenhouse. It was a sophisticated land grab dressed up as eco-consciousness. I need everything you've found, I told Erin. Already on the flash drive, but be careful. These people aren't just pushy neighbors. Blackwater Capital has serious connections. So do I replied. And unlike them, I don't hide behind fake badges. After hanging up, I checked my security feeds. Everything looked quiet. Too quiet. The farmers market confrontation had escalated things. I lay in bed, Rocky at my feet, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, I would take everything to Marshal Caldwell. We had enough to launch an investigation. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had the upper hand. I should have known better. At 3:17 a.m., all my security cameras went dark simultaneously. 30 seconds later, Rocky's bark jolted me awake. They had returned, and this time, they came prepared. Professional operators don't make the same mistake twice. I slipped out of bed and moved to the window. No visible movement, but Rocky's continued growl told me they were out there. I grabbed my go bag from under the bed and pulled out night vision goggles, another relic from my service days. As the green-hued world came into focus, I counted 6 figures on my property. 2 approaching the house, 2 heading toward the greenhouse, 2 establishing a perimeter. This wasn't HOA enforcement. This was a tactical operation. My phone had no signal. They'd brought a jammer. But I had prepared after the first intrusion. I reached under my bed and pulled out an old CB radio. Technology from the 70s, impossible to jam. "Caldwell, you there? It's Anders, code yellow. We'd established this protocol. Code yellow meant trouble at my place." The radio crackled. "Copy. En route. 10 minutes. 10 minutes was too long. I needed to slow them down. From my closet, I retrieved a metal case containing non-lethal tools, flashbangs and smoke grenades, effective for disorientation. As I prepared, I heard a glass cutter working on my back door. "Rocky, hide," I whispered. The border collie moved to his spot under the bathroom cabinet, a command we'd practiced. I wouldn't let them hurt my dog. I moved silently down the hallway, keeping to shadows. Years of clearing houses had taught me how to move undetected. I reached the kitchen just as the back door glass panel was removed. A gloved hand reached through to unlock the deadbolt. I waited, timing my move. As the first figure stepped through the doorway, I triggered a flashbang, tossing it into the yard before ducking behind the kitchen island. The bang was deafening, followed by shouts from outside. Inside, the first intruder stumbled, disoriented. I lunged forward, using a sweeping leg kick to take him down. His head hit the floor hard, and he lay still. 1 down, 5 to go. I grabbed his radio. "Front entry compromised. Need backup." A voice crackled back. "Copy. Team 2 redirecting." Good. That would pull the greenhouse team toward the house, away from my plants. I moved to the front, staying low. Through the window I could see 2 figures approaching, weapons drawn. Not standard issue for environmental enforcers. These were tactical suppressors, professional grade. This had escalated beyond HOA harassment. I triggered the outdoor security lights, bright LEDs that flooded the yard with daylight intensity illumination. The approaching figures froze, momentarily blinded. I used the opportunity to toss a smoke grenade through the partially opened living room window. As thick white smoke billowed out, I heard vehicles approaching. Caldwell had arrived sooner than expected. "Paulus, everyone down!" Multiple spotlights cut through the smoke as sheriff vehicles surrounded my property. The remaining intruders scattered, trying to retreat to their vehicles. I stepped onto my porch, hands visible. "Marshal, 1 unconscious inside, 5 more trying to escape." Deputies secured the perimeter while Caldwell coordinated the pursuit. Within minutes, they had apprehended 3 more intruders. 2 escaped into the woods. The man I'd knocked unconscious was being handcuffed as I approached Caldwell. "Perfect timing," I said. "Got lucky. Was already on patrol nearby." Caldwell looked around. "This isn't HOA enforcement, Anders. These are professionals. Check their IDs and vehicles." A deputy brought over wallets and vehicle information. The unconscious man's ID identified him as Eric Mercer, security consultant. His vehicle was registered to Third Circle Security Solutions, a private military contractor known for hiring ex-military for specialized domestic operations. "They're mercenaries," I said, the realization hitting hard. The question is, hired by whom? Caldwell frowned. An HOA doesn't have these resources. But Blackwater Capital does. I explained what Aaron had discovered. This is phase 3. When legal harassment doesn't work, they escalate. The search revealed more. In Mercer's SUV, deputies found a laptop with files labeled Project Green Shield, Willow Creek Implementation, and a document titled Non-Compliant Asset Removal, MMRDS, detailing plans to neutralize resistance and secure property for environmental remediation. They were going to force me out tonight, I realized. This goes beyond trespassing, Caldwell said. This is conspiracy, maybe attempted kidnapping. We need to bring in Karen Westfield. As we were about to leave, a deputy called Caldwell to Mercer, now conscious in a patrol car. You have no jurisdiction here, Mercer told Caldwell. Our operation is federally sanctioned under Environmental Protection Statute 47B. Caldwell scoffed. There is no such statute. You were caught breaking and entering. That's a felony. Mercer's expression didn't change. Call this number. He recited a Washington, D.C. area code. Tell them Operation Green Shield has been compromised. I felt a chill. Who are they, Mercer? For the first time, he smiled. Above your pay grade, Seal, both of yours. This isn't about an HOA or Blackwater Capital. This is national security. Caldwell and I exchanged glances. Either this was a bluff or we had stumbled into something much bigger. Book him, Caldwell told the deputy. Full charges. As Mercer was driven away, Caldwell turned to me. Think he's bluffing? I considered it. Maybe. But that line about national security, it reminded me of something. I thought back to my final mission. There was a classified initiative about securing domestic water rights, called Shield something. You think this is government work? Not officially. But there's always gray area, operations, contractors working with partial government knowledge. Rocky emerged from the house and pressed against my leg as he surveyed the chaos of police vehicles across my yard. Whatever this is, I said, scratching his ears, it's bigger than me or my greenhouse. But I'm not backing down. Caldwell nodded, his weathered face resolute. Neither am I. As dawn broke, casting long shadows across my violated home, I knew the real battle was just beginning. If Blackwater Capital thought a former SEAL would be easily intimidated, they had seriously miscalculated. By sunrise, my phone was flooded with messages from neighbors asking about the police presence. I updated WillowCreekWatch.org with an account of the night's events, including photos of the GRE enforcement officers being arrested. By noon, residents from neighboring communities were sharing similar experiences with GRE. Karen Westfield had disappeared. According to Frank, deputies had removed boxes of documents from her house. I was giving my statement at the sheriff's station when Erin called. You stirred up a hornet's nest, she said. After your website went viral, someone tried to scrub all online traces of the connection between GRI and Blackwater Capital. Did you get anything new? Better. I traced the scrubbing attempt to its source, an IP address registered to Congressman James Harwood's office. Harwood was our district's representative on the Natural Resources Committee. Are you sure? Positive. I found emails between Harwood's chief of staff and Blackwater executives discussing Project Green Shield. They refer to Willow Creek as a pilot implementation for something called the Strategic Resource Conservation Act. SRCA, I murmured. That must be what Mercer was referencing. There's no such act passed by Congress, Erin confirmed. But there are draft bills. Harwood is a co-sponsor. It would allow federal authorities to supersede local land ownership rights in areas deemed critical for water resources. That's unconstitutional. Hence the workaround. They're not seizing property, they're making it impossible to keep through regulatory pressure, then buying at deflated prices through shell companies. I thought about my greenhouse built with my own hands. This goes beyond Willow Creek, doesn't it? Way beyond. I found planning documents for 12 other communities, all with significant water resources. Caldwell approached, his expression grim. "We have a problem. The county prosecutor is recusing herself from any cases related to GRI, and the Department of Interior just requested we release Mercer on grounds of ongoing environmental security operations." "They can't do that," I protested. The request came with a call from Congressman Harwood to the county executive. Caldwell looked disgusted. "Politics is about to trample justice." I shared what Aaron had told me. Caldwell's face darkened with each detail. "So this isn't just corporate greed, it's political corruption." He shook his head. "We may be outgunned here." "Then we need to change the battlefield," I said. "Make it too public for them to operate in the shadows." "What are you thinking?" "Press conference. Today, you, me, and as many Willow Creek residents as we can gather. We lay out everything. The fake environmental initiative, the connections to Blackwater Capital, Harwood's involvement." Caldwell nodded slowly. "All right, but we need to move fast." 3 hours later, we stood on the courthouse steps before reporters and curious onlookers. Beside me were Caldwell and 30 Willow Creek residents, each holding photos of their violation notices or the green circle markings. "My name is Michael Anders, former Navy SEAL and resident of Willow Creek," I began. "What I'm about to share may sound incredible, but every detail is documented." For 20 minutes, I laid out the story methodically. The initial HOA harassment, the escalating pressure, the armed raid on my property. As I spoke, residents distributed packets to the press containing Project Green Shield documents and evidence connecting GRI to Blackwater Capital and Congressman Harwood. "This is not merely an HOA dispute," I concluded. "This is a coordinated effort to force homeowners off their land using fabricated violations as pretext. The ultimate goal is to acquire strategic water resources, consolidating them under corporate control with political blessing." Questions erupted from the press. Just as the questioning intensified, Karen Westfield pushed forward, followed by a man in an expensive suit. "This is slander," Karen shouted. "The Green Revival Initiative is a legitimate conservation program. Mr. Anders is a disturbed individual who has repeatedly violated community standards." The press turned their cameras toward her, sensing drama. I remained calm. "Mrs. Westfield, would you care to explain why armed men claiming to represent GRI attempted to forcibly enter my home at 3 a.m.? The man beside her stepped forward with polished confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm David Merrick, legal counsel for Nexus Development Group. These accusations are both baseless and dangerous. The Green Revival Initiative is a registered nonprofit dedicated to sustainable community development." Caldwell stepped to the microphone. "Mr. Merrick, is Nexus Development Group affiliated with Blackwater Capital?" Merrick smiled tightly. "Nexus has partnerships with numerous investment entities. Those relationships are entirely legitimate." I held up my phone. "Would you care to comment on this email from your CEO to Congressman Harwood's Chief of Staff discussing the acquisition strategy for Willow Creek under Project Green Shield?" The image projected on our screens showed both Nexus and congressional letterheads. Merrick's professional mask slipped for just a second. "That document appears to be fabricated," he recovered smoothly. A young reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Merrick, can you explain why Nexus Development Group has purchased 17 properties in Willow Creek in the past 6 months, all from homeowners who received environmental violation notices from GRI?" Merrick hesitated. "Nexus invests in communities with growth potential. The timing is coincidental." "Is it also coincidental," I asked, "that all 17 properties are adjacent to Willow Creek's main aquifer access points?" The press erupted with questions, most now directed at Merrick and Karen. In the chaos, I noticed Merrick discreetly speaking into his phone, his expression grim. Caldwell leaned close to me. "You just made some powerful enemies very nervous." By the time the event concluded, regional TV stations were broadcasting live, and Project Green Shield was trending on social media. The operation had lost its most valuable asset. secrecy. They're moving to damage control, Aaron reported 2 days later. Blackwater Capital denies any connection to GRI beyond advisory services. Congressman Harwood claims his intervention was based on constituent concerns about overreach by local law enforcement. Standard playbook, I observed. Outside, deputies kept watch after anonymous threats against us. Deny, deflect, discredit. What about Karen? Gone. Her house is empty. She sold it 3 weeks ago but continued living there. The buyer? A subsidiary of Nexus Development. She knew she might need to disappear. What about the men from the raid? Released on bail, charges reduced to simple trespassing despite the arsenal they carried. Political pressure, I muttered, but the story's out now. My doorbell rang. Rocky barked once, alert but not aggressive. Mr. Anders? I'm Dr. Eleanor Reeves, hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. I believe we need to talk. After verifying her credentials, I invited her in. Dr. Reeves got straight to business. I've been mapping the Willow Creek watershed for 15 years. When I saw your press conference, several pieces clicked into place. She showed us a topographical map. This aquifer isn't just any water source. It's a critical recharge zone, one of the few pristine underground reservoirs left in the region. Valuable? Aaron asked. Increasingly priceless, Dr. Reeves confirmed. With drought conditions expanding nationwide, untapped water sources like this have become strategic assets, and water rights laws in this state heavily favor consolidated ownership, meaning whoever controls the access points controls the resource, I said. Precisely, if a single entity acquired all properties with direct aquifer access, she pointed to an area that perfectly matched the properties targeted by GRI, including mine. They could control water distribution for 3 counties, creating artificial scarcity, Aaron concluded. They could name their price. Water is the new oil, Mr. Anders, and you're sitting on a well. After she left, I received a call from Caldwell. Turn on your TV, Channel 7. Congressman Harwood stood at a podium, his expression grave. Allegations raised by a disturbed veteran and an overreaching sheriff. While I sympathize with Mr. Anders' struggles with PTSD, his conspiracy theories about legitimate environmental conservation efforts are harmful. I have requested a federal investigation into interference with approved resource management initiatives. He's flipping the script, Aaron said, making us the bad guys. Furthermore, Harwood continued, I am proud to announce that the Strategic Resource Conservation Act will be fast-tracked next week, ensuring vital natural resources remain protected. The news anchor added, Congressman Harwood also addressed the incident at Michael Anders' home, suggesting it resulted from misunderstanding and noting that Mr. Anders' military record includes citations for aggressive behavior under pressure. That's classified information, I said angrily, and completely mischaracterized. Caldwell's voice came through the phone. I just received notice that state environmental regulators will be conducting an emergency assessment of your property tomorrow. They're bringing a cease and desist order for your greenhouse. On what grounds? Suspected groundwater contamination. I can delay them maybe 24 hours. It's all I need. I'm going to turn their strategy against them. What are you planning? Caldwell sounded concerned. Information warfare works both ways, and I haven't played all my cards yet. I made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Reeves, requesting her immediate assistance with water testing. The second was to Jackson Way, a former combat journalist who had embedded with my SEAL team in Afghanistan and now worked as a producer for a major investigative news program. I need to go public, I told Way. Full interview, all evidence on the table. Can you make it happen quickly? For you, absolutely. We can have a crew there tomorrow morning. That night I prepared meticulously. By dawn, Dr. Reeves had arrived with water testing equipment. These results will take a few hours, she explained. But based on preliminary findings, your water is pristine. If anything, your filtration system is improving the groundwater quality. The news crew arrived at 9, led by Jackson Way himself. "Michael Anders," he greeted me with a firm handshake. "Still fighting the good fight, I see, just different enemies." "Some enemies wear different uniforms," I replied, "but the tactics are familiar." For 3 hours, I gave Way's team full access to my property and every piece of evidence we'd collected. Dr. Reeves arrived with her test results, confirming that my greenhouse was not contaminating the aquifer, but actually benefiting the watershed. "So let me understand correctly," Way said during our interview. "You believe Congressman Harwood, Blackwater Capital, and this Green Revival Initiative are working together to force homeowners off their land to gain control of the aquifer? It's not a belief, it's documented fact." I held up the Project Green Shield files. These documents explicitly outline the strategy. Target key properties using fabricated violations, apply escalating pressure through an HOA front, and acquire the land at deflated prices once owners capitulate. "And when you didn't capitulate?" "They sent armed men to my home in the middle of the night." Way leaned forward. "Congressman Harwood has suggested your military experience may have caused you to overreact to routine environmental compliance checks. Is that why he personally intervened to secure the release of armed intruders caught breaking into my home? Is that why my classified military record was suddenly leaked?" As we concluded, Way asked directly, "Mr. Anders, given the powerful interests aligned against you, are you concerned for your safety?" I looked straight into the camera. "I spent 10 years in the most dangerous places on Earth, protecting American interests against external threats. I never imagined I'd find myself defending my own home against domestic predators hiding behind environmental regulations and political connections. But here's what I learned as a SEAL. The mission isn't over until everyone comes home safe. My mission now is to ensure that every homeowner threatened by this scheme knows they're not alone." As the crew packed up, I received a text from Caldwell. State regulators arrived with cease and desist order, stalling them. I texted back, "Tell them they're welcome to inspect, but the national news crew currently filming here would love to include their visit in tonight's broadcast." 20 minutes later, Caldwell called. "Miracle of miracles, the regulators suddenly received word that their inspection should be rescheduled pending further documentation. First rule of asymmetric warfare: when outgunned, change the battlefield." Way and his team left with everything they needed. Dr. Reeves departed with copies of her water quality analysis, and I waited, knowing that Congressman Harwood and Blackwater Capital would respond. They had too much invested in Project Green Shield to simply walk away. Just before sunset, a black SUV with government plates pulled into my driveway. A single man emerged, tall, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. He walked to my door without hesitation. "Mr. Anders?" "Thomas Blackwood, Deputy Secretary, Department of Interior. May I come in? I believe we have matters of national importance to discuss." Thomas Blackwood sat across from me at my kitchen table, declining my offer of coffee with a curt shake of his head. His presence radiated authority, the kind that comes from decades navigating Washington's power corridors. "Let's be direct," he began. "You've stumbled into a situation more complex than you realize. Project Green Shield isn't simply a corporate land grab. It's part of a broader national security initiative to secure critical water resources before foreign interests can. The only people threatening my property are domestic: Blackwater Capital, GRI, and Congressman Harwood." Blackwood's mouth tightened. "Harwood is overzealous, but the objective is sound. These aquifers are vital national assets we can't leave vulnerable to fragmented ownership." "So the government is backing this operation?" "Not officially. The Strategic Resource Conservation Act will provide legal framework once passed. Until then, we're operating in a gray area." "Armed men breaking into my home? Fabricated violations? That's not a gray area. That's criminal conspiracy." "Your interview airs tonight. It will cause problems and alert our adversaries to resources we're trying to quietly secure." "I'm offering you a deal." Blackwood removed an envelope. "Double market value for your property plus compensation. You withdraw your allegations and sign an NDA, and if I refuse, your military record contains classified operations that could be problematic. Tax audits can be triggered. Mental health evaluations for PTSD can be mandated. He stated this as bureaucratic fact. We prefer cooperation. I studied him carefully. The most dangerous moment in any operation is when you start believing your objective justifies any means. That's when good people become what they're fighting against. What's your answer? No. I'm not selling my home, and your threats don't change the fact that I have documented evidence of criminal activity. When government officials collaborate with corporations to strip citizens of property rights, that's the real national security threat. Blackwood reclaimed the envelope. I came here as a courtesy. What happens next didn't have to happen. Your Project Green Shield is exposed. The proper way to secure resources is through transparent legislation, not conspiracy and intimidation. You see this as a battle with clear moral lines, he said at the door. I see a complex problem where perfect solutions don't exist. History will decide which perspective was correct. History is written by people who stand their ground when it matters, I replied. Way's expose hit harder than expected. Dr. Reeves demolished claims that my greenhouse posed environmental threats. Former residents from other communities shared similar stories of HOA harassment. The pattern was undeniable. By morning, the fallout was unprecedented. Congressman Harwood announced an indefinite medical leave. Karen Westfield was cooperating with authorities in exchange for immunity. The Strategic Resource Conservation Act was withdrawn from committee. Most importantly, homeowners nationwide were organizing, sharing information, and standing together against intimidation tactics. Over the following months, Willow Creek transformed. Our community garden program expanded to 3 locations. The HOA was restructured with transparent rules. A local water conservation trust was established to ensure the aquifer remained both protected and accessible. 1 year later, I installed a plaque at the garden entrance. When ordinary people stand together, extraordinary things happen. That evening, Thomas Blackwood returned, no longer in government service. Wanted to see what you built after you won, he said. We built, I corrected. The community did this. Water security is still a national issue that won't go away. And your solution was wrong, I replied. You can't protect resources by trampling the rights of the people those resources serve. He handed me a business card. If you're ever interested in bringing your perspective to the table, there are people in Washington who might actually listen now. Is that an invitation or a warning? Blackwood almost smiled. Let's call it recognition. You changed the equation, Anders. Not many people can say that. As I walked back to my greenhouse, I knew the battle for resource control would continue. Next time, though, we wouldn't be caught by surprise. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I hear glass breaking or Rocky barking a warning, but then I look out at my greenhouse, illuminated by security lights that now seem reassuring rather than intrusive. If you're watching this because you've spotted strange violations in your neighborhood, or an environmental initiative targeting specific properties, or those green circles marking homes that later go up for sale, you're not alone. What happened in Willow Creek is happening wherever water becomes more valuable than the land above it. Stand your ground, document everything, find allies, go public. Remember that predators, whether in combat zones or corporate boardrooms, rely on isolating their targets. And still here, still growing tomatoes, still finding peace in the soil. Sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with weapons but with truth, courage, and the stubborn refusal to be driven from places that have become sanctuaries. This is Michael Anders, former Navy SEAL, current gardener and community organizer, signing off from Willow Creek, where we learned that when you stand up to bullies, sometimes you end up standing for something much bigger than yourself.